Well, first of all, as I just mentioned, you have had this extraordinary 4-decade experience in the Congress, both as a staff member and as an elected member of the House of Representatives. If you can put your finger on any one thing, what would you say is the biggest change that you've seen in the way that the House, in particular, is today versus how it has been over your long time there?
Let me give you two answers, not just one. The one is very positive, the other is very negative. The very positive is the high degree of professionalism that's evident in the Congress, particularly in the staff, the support staff, individual offices and committee offices. Let me give you, for instance, when I first came to Capitol Hill as a starry-eyed youngster back in 1964, the preponderance of personal staff and even a large number of the committee staff were there because they were involved back home in the campaign, or they were related to one of the big contributors. Today, a high degree of professionalism. I mean, for example, in the Science Committee, our professional staff has 14 PhDs. Quite honestly, I don't even know if they're Republican or Democrat. I don't care about that. What I do care about is their professional ability to add something of significance to the committee and our deliberations. So that is a very positive. On the negative side, I am leaving at a time when I have never seen Congress like it is today. The highest degree of partisanship I have ever experienced, from the days as a youngster on the staff to the present. Bipartisanship is virtually non-existent. Partisanship is there, and the lowest level of tolerance ever. It's my view, and my view is the right view, and I don't care what you think. It's my view. No tolerance for another point of view. So that's a plus and a minus.
Why is that? That is really central to what we're trying to understand about Congress today. Why is the partisanship so personal, so sharply defined, so bitter, do you think?
Well, I think the major contributing factor, particularly of recent years, is the close division in the Congress. It's not an overwhelming majority or an underwhelmed minority. It's very close, almost evenly divided, which reflects where Americans are, the people we represent. I think that most people, when all is said and done, now this is self-serving because I'm the quintessential moderate or centrist, as some people will label us, but most people, if you really examine in depth their attitudes towards government and towards public policy, they're somewhere in the middle. They want to avoid the extremes of the left or the right. But here's what happens today, and you as a distinguished journalist know full well. It is the fringes that get the attention and grab the headlines. You know, I tell my kids, I try to meet with youngsters when they come in from all levels, but high school students are coming more and more to Washington in various support groups, Presidential Class for Young Americans, National Youth Leadership Conference. And I always instruct my staff, try to figure out how my time can be juggled so I can meet with these people. Because I want to talk to them and sort of get them interested in government and develop in them a greater appreciation for what it's all about. And I find that very instructive.
Can you give us any personal examples of how you've seen the relationships between the parties change from when you were initially elected into Congress until now? Is there anything personal that comes to mind in your own experience?
The way that we operate, it used to be, when I first came, the call to roll, the alphabetical order. And then those who didn't answer, didn't respond, they'd have a second call. So it would take about 45 minutes. And if you were an observer sitting in a gallery back in the 60s, early 60s, before they went to the electronic voting, you would look down on the floor and you'd see members sitting on the floor waiting for their name to be called. And you know what they were doing when they were sitting on the floor? They were actually talking to each other. And it may have been. I mean, people will be in the gallery now and they might see me with some of my friends, John McHugh of New York or John Sweeney of New York, or Jim Walsh. You know, we tend to stick together. But chances are we're talking about what happened to the Yankees last night or something. But you used to be able to get to know members better. Today, with electronic voting, there's no reason to be on the floor. Members will dash in at the last minute, look up at the board, see what's happening, put their card in, press the button, and dash right out. Don't have any interaction with their colleagues. And I can say truthfully today, there are members on both sides of the aisle, this is not party specific, who really can't, in all honesty, say they know a member of the opposition. Oh, they all know their names, and Linda Douglas, you know, and Sherwood Boehlert, but they don't know if they're married or single, if they got family, if they're, you know, trying to struggle to pay tuition payments, or they like the Yankees or hate the Yankees. They don't know any of that. And so when you don't know someone, you tend not to relate to that individual. And so that's the biggest change I've seen. And one of the best advice I give young members, I say when young members come into Washington, you know, now a veteran member, I say, let me give you a couple of tips on things I think would be beneficial. First of all, get to know your colleagues. That's an obvious thing. But secondly, go on a congressional trip someplace. Now, I know the public perception is, you know, they're junkets. The taxpayers are footing the bill for some trip to an exotic place that's not going to accomplish anything. That's nonsense. Are there junkets? Sure there are. But the overwhelming majority of trips are for legitimate purposes, and usually spouses will accompany the member. So if you're sitting down with another couple, you may be a left-wing Democrat and a right-wing Republican with spouses, having dinner, maybe a glass of wine, and talking, you understand there's a human element, and you understand more about the other person. And so that I think is very important. You've got to get to know people, and you've got to get to understand, to appreciate that there are other points of view.
How has that partisanship, in your view, affected the legislating process and even the decision-making capacity of the Congress?
Well, just take the current Congress we're serving in now. We're coming up to, as this interview is going on, we're coming up to an election. And if you follow all the guesstimates, it could go either way. The Republicans could maintain the majority, or the Democrats could regain the majority. And what is happening now is you're watching both sides getting into that campaign mode, where anything one side proposes, the other side feels obligated to oppose no matter what. For example, the Democrats, who are now in the minority, I said earlier in the day when someone asked me this question, I said, if I introduced a bill to codify into law that the third Sunday in May would be Mother's Day, I'm convinced, because I'm a Republican, it would be universally opposed by the Democrats, because their mode now, getting into the election, is don't let the Republicans do anything that they can take credit for, because that will hurt our chances of regaining the majority. And then on the Republican side, there are people that will look at you down their nose if they see you have a Democrat co-sponsor of a bill. It used to be when you thought you had a great idea, you'd try to convince some of your colleagues to support it, and you always would showcase, I got broad-based support. I got Republicans and Democrats, I've got Easterners and Westerners and Northern and Southerners, and so you could say, look, this is a great idea and a widespread support. You don't do that anymore. The bipartisanship is sort of out the window. From my experience over all these 42 years, it used to be, in my view, that about 6 months before a presidential election, everything would begin to change, and everyone would get into campaign mode, us against them. Then the election would occur, no matter who won. Then we'd revert back for the next 3.5 years to the old way of doing things, try to sort things out and work together on a bipartisan basis. That's changed dramatically. It has been in the campaign mode since early '02. And here we are in '06.